Recently, I fell in love with an abstinent and cold professor. In order to chase him, I racked my brains, day and night. He pushed me to a brain hospital. It's so hard to chase, the old lady doesn't chase anymore. Later, I fell in love with a cute little handsome guy with tiger teeth. Professor Gao Leng was reluctant. My best friend graduated from graduate school, and I went to school to celebrate her. When I was taking a photo, a handsome guy with wide shoulders and a narrow waist entered my lens. Excited hearts, trembling hands. Jessica, who is that? I put down my camera and quickly approached my girlfriend and asked. Alvis Buckle, the professor in their department, seems to be called Werner Eleanor. Alvis Buckle is her boyfriend and studied law. Is there a contact method? Push me. The scumbag attribute is committed again. My girlfriend rolled her eyes and stared at me with a solemn expression. Hey, I smiled flatteringly. I grew up with her, and she knew where I liked to fart when I went to bed at night, and she couldn't hide anything from her. Does this Werner Eleanor have a girlfriend? Nope. My best friend replied to me categorically. I looked at her for 3 seconds to make sure she wasn't lying to me. Let Alvis Buckle shoot you, I'll leave beforehand. I threw the camera at her and ran. Lilith Kennan. You're a friend of all sex. Girlfriends squeak and scream in the back. I ran more cheerfully. Let her throw me aside for the sake of Alvis Buckle. Werner Eleanor. I hurried to see Werner Eleanor's back by the lake, and hurriedly called out to him. He paused, and slowly turned. It's close. I can see better. Looking at the biceps of his shirt, that was about to burst, I couldn't help my nosebleed. Are you? He looked at me suspiciously, and his voice had a clear smell like a mountain spring. Damn. How can someone be in good shape and have such a good voice at the same time? Hello teacher, I'm your student's girlfriend's best friend, and I'm quite close to you. You don't have to be so polite to me. I was busy. I took out my usual technique to make people take off their guards, and smiled silly. Is there something wrong? He still spoke in a polite and detached tone. I sighed softly. The men of the abstinence department are really not easy to flirt. It's such a teacher. I'm going to move recently. I'm afraid that I won't understand the contract and be cheated. I want to add you a weshit, and I don't understand to ask you. I blinked my big innocent eyes and stared straight at him. You can find Alvis Buckle. He looked away uncomfortably and whispered back to me. Forget about this stubble. Alvis Buckle is my best friend's boyfriend, and I don't have a good influence on him. I said with my fingers twisted. He looked at me with some hesitation. It's my fault. I'm embarrassed. It's all my fault that I didn't save money after I just graduated. I can't afford to hire a lawyer. It's all my fault. Don't trouble you. I'll be deceived if I'm deceived, and I deserve it. I hung my head and said in frustration. The voice slowly began to whimper. Just when I was about to vomit nausea, he replied lightly. In order not to seem so deliberate, I deliberately waited until the evening to send him a message. Werner Eleanor, are you free now? I waited a long time before he replied to me. Yes, the contract was sent to me. It's simple and straight to the point. Suddenly, there was no chance to show it. Moving was an excuse for me to get close to him. The contract was definitely not something to talk about, so I started to change the subject. That's the kind of teacher. My house hasn't been decided yet. I followed the agent to see some a few days ago, but the security is a little bad. I live alone with a girl, and I'm a little scared. Where do you live? How's the security environment going? I sent it away. Waited a while. On the opposite side, it keeps saying, typing. Just when I couldn't help but put a question mark on him. Here comes the news. You can't afford to live in the neighborhood I live in. Jessica, is Werner Eleanor rich? In the middle of the night, I couldn't sleep, so I sent a message to my girlfriend to find out the situation. A man who is not short of money. It's hard to chase. When you use me, do you remember who I am? Girlfriend's back in seconds. That's the tone. I hurried to coax. Stick, kiss, hug, hold high. Get out. Hey, that's it. How many years have passed? She still eats soft rather than hard. I just asked Alvis Buckle, and he said they teach to drive a Rolls Royce, and they live in villas. So if you don't forget it, you can the 3 apartments. Impossible. The superior biceps line is the most perfect one I've seen in this time. I'm not going to let go easily. And what if he doesn't like women? My girlfriend sent me another exciting message. What do you mean? Alvis Buckle heard Werner Eleanor say with his own ears. I didn't spread the rumors, and I think it must be true, otherwise he is 30 years old, and the conditions are so good, if there is no problem, how can he not find a girlfriend? That's better. My eyes lit up. You're not stupid, are you? If you continue to do this, be careful that you won't be able to marry in this life. Hey, don't worry. I sent her a chest-beating emoji. She sent me a roll of her eyes and ignored me. I know my girlfriend is for my good. Since she found Alvis Buckle, a good man, she has given me Amway every day, asking me to find a boyfriend as soon as possible. I've never wanted to fall in love seriously in my life. After determining that Werner Eleanor was rich, I completely abandoned the rich woman pretending to be a forced routine, when I used to chase people, and began to pretend to be the weak and poor little white flower character he ate when he added me to wish it that day. I went to see the house today, and I was scolded by the agent on the way. Can I sue him, teacher? Recently, I've been very busy at work, and I can't go directly to school to block people. I can only chat more on Weshit, when I have free time in the evening to deepen my impression, lest he forget who I am. Tell me about it. In less than a minute, his message came. He said that I don't have any money, and I can't believe it after seeing so many houses. What did he scold you? He spoke so loudly that I was crying, when he said he would, and he didn't stop. I'm making it up in a serious way. Werner Eleanor ignored me for a long time. Werner Eleanor. I started poking his head, patting and patting and patting him. Just got a call. Ito. After he replied to me, I immediately responded. How many days did he show you the house? After a burst of typing on the screen, he sent a message. This asked me. A month. I haven't rented a house before, so I can only try to estimate the time myself. After sending it, I suddenly remembered that, when my grandfather gave me a third house, the agent followed him for 3 months without getting angry at all. I'm a little weak-hearted, isn't it a little less? Werner Eleanor. Me. He ignored me anymore. TSK, don't guess what a man thinks. Alas, when I was young, I ate the last meal but didn't have the next meal, and now I've finally grown up, and I chatted with people for a while, and I talked about the last sentence, but not the next sentence. I really want to cry. I straightened my mood and sent another sentence. What can I do? The person you choose is crying and you have to be spoiled. Werner Eleanor. Me. He didn't reply to me. After 5 minutes, he gave me the contact information of the brain hospital. A week later, as soon as I finished filming in the field, I rushed to find Werner Eleanor. I didn't expect to see a farce at the school gate. Come and see, rascal. A middle-aged aunt in a floral dress grabbed Werner Eleanor's arm and howled loudly. With his cold male god face, it immediately attracted many onlookers. Let go, he said with a frowning brow, his face cold as I had never seen before. The aunt still pulls him, and refuses to let him go. He couldn't help it and began to want to shake her off. Murder. The young man is bullying the old man. The aunt fell to the ground and began to cry and wipe away tears. But I could see clearly from this angle that Werner Eleanor had fallen to the ground before she could throw her. I'm afraid I didn't even hit a but Pierre tilde 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 tilde. I didn't expect him to look like a talent, but he was actually a pervert. That's right. I heard that he is still a professor at this university. He is really unseemly. How can such a person be a teacher and report him? More and more people around them began to lash out at Werner Eleanor, but he still stood in place like Mount Tai. Don't excuse and don't go. I'm afraid I'm not a fool. Give it a go. Seeing that he was about to be covered by the crowd, I hurriedly ducked left and right to find my way through the gap. Werner Eleanor may have heard my voice, and turned to look back, saw me walking towards him. His form froze for a moment. Why are you here? Teacher, I've told you 800 times in Weshit, I'm afraid you forgot it. I raised my phone in my hand, and smiled at him. He relieved himself slightly. I don't have time to give you the law right now. Who are you? Before he could finish speaking, the aunt on the ground suddenly screamed, and got up from the ground to pull me. Daring, I yelled and turned my head to confront her, avoiding her hand that tried to pinch my arm. He's my boyfriend. I pointed to Werner Eleanor. Suddenly, I felt his gaze sweep over me. I tried to straighten my back, and keep myself from being intimidated. Let's take a look, with my convex girlfriend here. Do you think he will play hooligan on an ant? I said to the crowd of onlookers. They looked at me and my aunt, and they were a little shaken, and the shouting and killing just now was much weaker. Shameless thing. The ant in the flower skirt seemed to be stimulated, took off her shoes and threw them at me. I quickly dodged. Unexpectedly, she just screamed and spat in front of me. I can't run before I can get on my feet. I can only close my eyes tightly and cover my face with my hands. Fool. Suddenly, I heard a soft sigh. The next second, I felt like I was hanging in the air. The 2 armpits were lifted and moved. She's my student. This matter has nothing to do with her. Let her go first, and I'll settle your affairs slowly. When I opened my eyes again, I saw Werner Eleanor's extremely thick back in front of me. The nosebleeds are a bit out of control again. But, student. Alvis Buckle seems to be his student, and I can't even have a relationship with him. Why? The ant didn't give up, as if she couldn't beat it, and began to splash and roll on the ground again. I looked at Werner Eleanor's immobile back. He's too gentlemanly, isn't he? Just as I was about to roll up my sleeves and get back on, the crowd suddenly moved out of the way. Who called the police? A couple of officers walked over and asked, looking at the 3 of us gathered in the center. Me. Werner Eleanor replied in silence and walked over to talk to them. It didn't take long for us to be taken to the police station. Officers and good people, you have to call the shots for me. As soon as she entered the door, Aunt Hua's skirt began to cry and grab the ground. The surveillance at the school gate has been called up, and after reading it, you will know that we will not let go of a bad person. The police officer responded casually and walked forward, not looking at the ant in the flower skirt. I noticed her expression as she froze to the point where she began to panic. Let's see if you can cry in a moment. Don't go in. Before the surveillance video was played, Werner Eleanor suddenly said that he wanted me to wait for him at the door. No, one more person and one more mouth. You can't speak, you can't talk about her. I interrupted him with a wave of my hand. I entered the police station for the first time in my life. How fresh. I still want to stay a little longer. How can I go? Before Werner Eleanor could open his mouth, the next time, I hurriedly walked in after the officer. After watching the monitoring, I'm stupid. No wonder Werner Eleanor didn't want me to see it, and he didn't defend himself in public. The ant touched his ass. He's the one who's been tricked. After leaving the police station, Werner Eleanor's face was a little bad. I hurried to catch up. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone. I raised 2 fingers and swore to God. He glanced at my palm, the corners of his mouth twitched, he didn't speak, and continued walking. Why don't you think I'm a hooligan? On the boulevard on the right side of the road. I walked quietly behind him for a while, and he suddenly asked me, how can the person I fancy be? Halfway through, I covered my mouth with hindsight. I just came out of the police station, and the excitement hasn't passed yet, and I can't talk anymore. He heard the words of my womanly nature. You won't ignore me, will you? I looked at him cautiously. He stared ahead, his jaw tense. Finished. Actually, I was going to say that I knew he didn't like women, so I believed it, but he didn't give me a chance to explain. The steps are very large. It's like there's a ghost chasing after you. Werner Eleanor, are you home? Go home and wash up. I was lying on the couch and eating grapes while I messaged Werner Eleanor. The moment his message arrived, I almost choked on the grape seeds in my mouth. Relieved for a moment, I just sent it to him. Yes, real people. It took a long time for him to get back to me. That's when I was relieved. That's the right rhythm. He must have been bored just now, thinking that he and I have at least entered the police station together. There should be some affection. The next half-month, I rarely sent him some strange dispute cases that I found on the internet, and asked him to help me solve them. And I started to talk nonsense. Have you eaten? Did you sleep? Did you hang out? Today's weather is good, suitable for 2 people. There are also some extremely non-nutritious, good morning, good afternoon, and good night. He would basically reply to me, but every time I ask him out to dinner or a movie, he will always use this time to be too busy to refuse. Jessica, Werner Eleanor is really hard to chase. I messaged my girlfriend in frustration. I used to chase people. The shortest is 3 days. The longest is half a month. and it should always be in hand. It's been almost a month this time, and I haven't even touched his biceps. That, another one. What do you mean? My girlfriend sent me a picture of a little fresh meat. He was wearing a short white tee photo, and his biceps were much better than those of Werner Eleanor. It's just a little worse than Werner Eleanor's. You've changed, I asked my girlfriend in surprise. She always didn't like me changing boyfriends so often, and wanted me to settle down. What's going on today, Alvis Buckle? Their professors don't like women. You can't catch up with them in your life. Just change them. I know this boy. He knows the roots. He is a good person, and he also has a body you like. You try it with him everywhere. Maybe. No wonder. This is for me on a blind date. You know that I'm not married, and you're not afraid that I'll delay him. I would have liked to say no outright. Can look at the little tiger tooth of the little fresh meat in the photo? The subordinates are gone. He's kind of poked at my cuteness. He's just like you. He's an unmarried. So maybe you two will be able to bear the blame. Girlfriend back. But I'm still a little reluctant to let me just give up on Werner Eleanor. Werner Eleanor, are you free tomorrow? After thinking about it, I sent him a message anyway. Nope, he replied in seconds. But unfortunately the content is not what I wanted. There was a pause. I sent a good message to my girlfriend. Under the lead of girlfriends, I quickly added Weshit with Xiao Xianru. His name is Cory Buckle, and his family seems to have a mine. And because of his hobby, he occasionally works part-time as a model. I'm a magazine photographer by profession. When we chat, whether it is a professional question or a daily preference, I find that we have a lot of similarities. No wonder Jessica would push him to me, so convinced. Are you free tomorrow? In the evening, I was getting ready to rest when Cory Buckle's Weshit message came. Yes, playground. Are you going? Okay. When I was done, I exited his interface and accidentally caught a glimpse of Werner Eleanor's Weshit on the screen, which I pinned to the top. I suddenly felt like I was out of this world. The last time I messaged him was 5 days ago. During this period, I was busy, chatting with Xiao Xianru and busy with work, and gradually forgot about him. He didn't look for me either. The next day, I arrived at the entrance of the playground around 11 o'clock in the morning. Cory Buckle is already waiting for me. What do you want to play? I pointed to the merry-go-round not far away. He chuckled, shook his head, and led me away. Before you sit up, he thoughtfully asked me if I wanted to help me with my bag. I thought about it and handed it to him. The moment he caught it, I felt like my phone was vibrating. But the Trojan horse is already spinning. I had no choice but to withdraw my hand quickly. After about 4 turns, the Trojan stopped. Cory Buckle put down the phone he was taking pictures of me and walked over to me. Do you want to come down? I nodded. He stretched out his hand to help me. I instinctively avoided it. For a second, I was stunned. I'm an old pervert. How can I take advantage of it? I didn't understand the momentary action, and I didn't care. And I put my arm on his arm, as naturally as I had before. Be careful. Under his intimate reminder, I jumped down in a big stride, looking at him with a defiant smile. Didn't expect to meet a pair of black eyes behind him that couldn't see emotion. I'm numb. How did Werner Eleanor end up here? What's wrong? Cory Buckle asked me. Maybe I was stunned for too long, and he followed my line of sight to look behind him. That instant, I watched Werner Eleanor look away from my face, and make eye contact with him. A friend. I steadied my emotions and whispered. Somehow, looking at Werner Eleanor's increasingly tense look, I somehow began to get a little nervous. Patted Cory Buckle and told him to turn around. Oh, are you going to say hello? He asked me. You don't have to. No need. I heard Jessica say that you like to play more exciting sports, and I'll accompany you to a roller coaster. I changed the subject. Okay. He didn't feel anything, and nodded in agreement. When you turn away, I could feel a gaze behind me watching me, and I kept picking up my pace until I was around the corner, and the gaze disappeared, and I breathed a sigh of relief. Why are you so nervous? I don't even know it myself. Maybe it's from the natural identity suppression of the title teacher. You go, I'll wait for you, I said to Cory Buckle. I don't like anything that speeds up my heart, and it's my limit to be able to ride a merry-go-round with him. Soon, he handed me the bag and said, as if he was afraid that I would be in a hurry. He explained softly. Okay, I smiled in response. Cory Buckle is the perfect companion in every sense of the word. He is a year younger than me, but he does everything in every way with great care. It's just that, I don't know why, but falling in love, which has always been a pleasure for me, suddenly felt a little tired. Buzz. The phone in my bag started vibrating, and I took it out and connected it. How is this little brother you introduced to reliable? My girlfriends can't wait to find out how we're doing. It's okay. You, so high-minded. When I asked Cory Buckle, he was full of praise for you. Listening to Jessica's wild laughter on the other end of the line, I angrily snapped the phone. I know that this guy is hiding bad water. When I was collecting my phone, I suddenly caught a glimpse of an unread message before the interface went off. The sender seems to be Werner Eleanor. I thought of the vibration before I got on the Trojan. My hand was stuck on the bag for a long time, but I finally took the phone off and turned the screen back on. I'm done, and I have a few days off. I just passed by the playground. Why don't you come and play together? Look at these two pieces of news. I suddenly had an indescribable feeling in my heart. What's the matter with Cory Buckle? As soon as I woke up, Jessica's phone bombarded me. What's wrong? He told me that you haven't contacted him for a few days, and he asked you to hang out, but you refuse for all kinds of reasons. I recovered from my dizziness. Jessica, twisted melons aren't sweet, I advised my girlfriends. Shay, do you still have Werner Eleanor in mind? Cory Buckle told me that you hadn't paid much attention to a man since you saw him at the amusement park that day. I heard his description of the man's appearance, and I guessed that it was Werner Eleanor. How is that possible? I just don't want to scum Cory Buckle. He's too nice. No, I worked hard to find a satisfactory candidate for you, and you are too immoral like this. I see. I'll find a time to talk to him clearly. Jessica, don't worry. Love you. Bye. Before the girlfriends are more cranky and gibberish, I cut the phone. The roots of the ears were instantly cleared a lot. Do you have time to eat in the evening? I got up and poured a glass of warm water, and I drank it slowly, and messaged Cory Buckle. Yes, he replied in seconds. I looked at the chat history on the top of the screen, and it looked like I had been chasing Werner Eleanor when I first started chasing Werner Eleanor. Look at me or don't go back, or just return to the state of 1 or 2 words. Why do you suddenly feel like I'm really a scumbag? In the past, I was chasing others, and I replied in seconds when others sent me. But this was the first time I fell in love with someone, and I was so inactive. Is something really wrong with my brain? I didn't dare to make Cory Buckle wait any longer and add a few more points to my guilt, so I immediately messaged him to determine the place and time for dinner tonight. See you in the evening. See you or leave. HMM. After replying, I looked at this cold word, a little numb. This gesture is becoming more and more like Werner Eleanor. What's going on? Okay. I hastened to withdraw. I sent it again. Looking at this licky sentence, my mind slowly stabilized. Yes, that's who I am. That sentence must have come from a ghost. Today on location, go to a farther place, on the outskirts of the city. I hurriedly patted it, but I still didn't have to resist God's quick change of face. Stop filming. Go hide in the house. The executive director howled. The models ran into the house in a panic to take shelter from the rain. The rest of the staff quickly packed up the machine and walked briskly inside. When I came out in the morning, the air seemed to be piping hot. Now let's talk about it. Looking at the heavier and heavier rain outside, everyone sighed involuntarily. I wanted to finish filming early and call it a day and go home, but I was trapped here in the rain. Where's my camera? After following the crowd with a sigh, when I checked it, I realized that I didn't have my camera in my bag. Yikes. Lilith Kennan, I just had my camera SD card full, so I took your hand, and I forgot to tell you when you weren't there. Horace, the new college graduate, scratched his head and said to me apologetically, "Where do you put it when you're done?" He was brought by me. I'm not short of money. Usually if he needs something, I will give it to him, but this camera is different. Even though he had a reason, my face turned cold uncontrollably. I'll look for it. Horace has never seen me lose my temper. I'm also a little panicked right now. He rummaged around, But he didn't see it, and the whole person became more and more helpless. Lilith Kennan, look over there. Is it your camera? Colleague Dunn gestured outside. I looked along. Sure enough, on the side of a hill not far away, I found my camera. There was no shelter to stop it, and it was so loud that it was hit by the rain. My mind went blank for a moment. I didn't care about anything more, and rushed out. I ran too fast. When I got to the edge of the dirt slope, I didn't expect the rain-washed ground here to be much softer, and I suddenly sank into it, and my body lost its balance. Looking at the bottom of the pit 5 or 6 meters deep, I closed my eyes and gritted my teeth. Hold the camera rolling down and hold it to your chest. When my leg was slid by the gravel and branches on the side of the slope, the piercing pain made my heart sink. Suddenly, just when I was ready to resign myself to fate, I was grabbed by the back of the neck. Werner Eleanor. The rain was too heavy. I squinted and looked up, and I couldn't see clearly, but the body resembles him. Did it hurt anything? Through the sound of the clear spring water above my head, I was sure it was Werner Eleanor. He asked me as he lay on the edge of the dirt slope. I still have my sun protective jacket and hat in my hand. Yes, somehow, he asked. The pain I could hold back just now is out of control, as if I can't bear it for a second. Feeling the trembling of my body, he frowned. Lilith Kennan. Lilith Kennan. Dunn and Horace, as well as some of the crew's crew, arrived one after another. With their help, Werner Eleanor managed to get me up from underneath without a hitch. Lilith Kennan, I'm sorry I forgot to put your camera away, or you wouldn't have almost fallen, Horace said as he stood beside me, propping up his clothes to shield me from the rain. His face was pale. I don't know if I'm scared. Go, bastard, go, don't bother the doctor. Before I could speak, Horace was pushed aside by Dunn, who had come with 2 umbrellas. He covered me with a handful. Another. I looked at Werner Eleanor, who was half kneeling beside me. His eyelashes were wet with the rain, and his angular chin was dripping with water, but he didn't notice it. His head hung slightly, all eyes focused on the wound in my leg. Look at him like this. The unknown feeling in my heart came back uncontrollably. Is it serious? Originally, I was not afraid, but he hadn't said a word for almost 3 minutes since he stared at my wound. The people I didn't panic were all panicked by him. It needs to be treated as soon as possible to avoid infection. Do you have a medical kit? He seemed to relent, and looked up to ask me, looking at his dark gaze. I, inexplicably cowardly, avoiding his gaze, I looked at Dunn. Is there a medical kit? Repeat mechanically like a repeater. Yes, how did I forget that? Dunn shouted excitedly, and was about to call someone to get it, but when the words came to his lips, he paused again. That's not right, I didn't take it. I used to take it out every day to be fine, but this time I didn't let me bring it because it was troublesome. Dunn's voice grew lower and lower in remorse. What can I do? Dunn's anxious crying was about to come out. The place where we filmed the location is relatively remote. There are no people living nearby. The house sheltered from the rain is an abandoned house, and there is no such thing as a medical kit inside. My house is nearby. I'll take her to heal. When the crowd was anxious, Werner Eleanor opened his mouth lightly. As he spoke, he covered my injured legs with a piece of tarpaulin that he had found somewhere, and half picked me up. Well, Lilith Kennan, do you know him? From the time he rescued me to the present, Werner Eleanor had only said one word to them. I'll look at the injury. Dunn mistook him for a doctor and asked him to watch it for me. I don't bother to explain either. They didn't know anything else about Werner Eleanor and me. No, Dunn, don't worry about it. I'll go back as soon as I go. Seeing that they were about to catch up again, I took Dunn's umbrella over my head and said, although I believe in Werner Eleanor's personality, he doesn't talk nonsense, but I'm afraid they'll ask questions. No one knows what the tone of this group is better than me, and the best thing to do is to get them not to go. Cut off the gossip at the source. All right, you get there and send me a message, Dunn instructed with a worried face on his face. Got it. I waved my hand at him. Dunn was the mentor I took with me when I first joined the magazine, and he was only 10 years older than me, but he talked like he was 30 years older than me, more like my dad than my dad. Werner Eleanor's car is parked not far away. Looking at the Rolls-Royce, which was getting closer and closer to me. I nervously grabbed the muscles in Werner Eleanor's arm. Well, resilient. What's wrong? He asked me softly, looking down. I'm wet. I'm afraid I'll break your seat, and I won't have any money to pay for it. I lowered my eyes and said, it's not that I can't afford Rolls-Royce, or I bought soil that I have to eat for 2 years. It's not that you can't afford to lose. Is to pretend to be a poor person in front of him? Pretending to be used to it. I could feel his gaze sweep me up and down, and his body tense slightly. Didn't wait for me to ask. He opened the back door and carefully let me in. He also took great care to put my injured leg on the leather chair in the horizontal row, so that I did not suffer a second injury. But after doing it, he didn't say a word to me along the way. Why is it so hard to guess what a man thinks? More than 10 minutes later, I was carried into the villa by him. As Werner Eleanor went upstairs to look for the medical kit, I half sat up from the couch and sent a message to Dunn, to say he was safe. Then I started looking around the house for everything that would reflect the light, to see how embarrassed I was. But when I saw the figure reflected in the glass of the floor-to-ceiling window, I'm numb. No wonder Werner Eleanor glanced me up and down before getting into the car. I cried with him in a bright luxury suit. I'm afraid I'm not a fool. Don't move. When I was stunned, Werner Eleanor came down from upstairs and sat down beside me, and wrapped me in a plush blanket. I'll give you a simple cleaning of the wound first. It will hurt a little. You bear with it, he said with a slight frown, wrung a hot towel and prepared to wipe my wound clean. Okay. I clutched the couch cover under me, and looked dead as if I were at home. He saw me like this. The heaviness on his face has been reduced a lot. Don't be nervous. It's just that the knee abrasion is a bit serious. Put some medicine and bandage it, and you'll be fine after about half a month of recuperation. He comforted me softly. I nodded. How are you so familiar with dealing with wounds? He quietly treated my wounds, and without saying a word, I couldn't bear it anymore, and began to talk casually. Deal with yourself often. Get used to it. He was silent and said, as if I had asked something I shouldn't have asked. I hurriedly shut up. All right. After a long time, he said, stand up from my side, and pack up the medicine kit. When he left, I breathed a sigh of relief. I'll take you to the bathroom on the 2nd floor in a while. You can take a simple shower. Don't catch a cold. Before I could take a breath, Werner Eleanor turned to look at me and said, hey, oh, bathe, is it? I'm a little numb again. By the time I finished washing and came out of the 2nd floor, wearing a Werner Eleanor shirt and trousers, he's no longer there. Werner Eleanor. I shouted upstairs, but no one answered. I can only hold on to the stairs, and slowly descend to find someone. I stood on the 1st floor. Just as I was about to call someone, I saw the figure of Werner Eleanor appear in the kitchen. He had his back to me, and didn't know what he was doing. What are you doing? As I got closer, I could smell a strong smell of ginger. Make some ginger soup to ward off the cold. As I expected, I looked at the pot with so many slices of ginger. It's numb. Turned around and slipped to the couch. Turned on the TV. Out of sight. Growing up, ginger has always been my mortal enemy. I don't have it at home. I don't have it. It's a little hot. Drink it while it's hot. As I watched SpongeBob SquarePants get up, Werner Eleanor's voice rang in my ears. I've never wanted to hear him speak like I have now. Put it here. I gestured to the coffee table. Selective avoidance. I watched you drink. I don't know if he saw through my thoughts, and didn't directly indulge me. I don't. I looked up to refute. But when I looked at Werner Eleanor's somewhat tired face, I suddenly couldn't say anything. Come on. I stretched out my hand, and calmly went to die. Take a bite. I choked and went straight to the heavenly spirit cover. What nasal congestion, dizziness, all through, including lacrimal glands. What are you crying about? Werner Eleanor was visibly panicked. It's fine. Physiological. I waved at him and shoved the bowl of ginger soup into his hand, eager to keep him away from me. Then you can rest for a while. I nodded, motioning for him to leave. Seeing that his figure was about to walk back to the kitchen, I had a rare sense of conscience. Remember to drink some, too. I shouted at him. HMM. He turned around and smiled. That smile. I'm gone. What does a man do when he looks so good? He cleaned up for a long time. When I came back again, I had already changed into the same shirt and trousers as me, and I had obviously just taken a shower. It's time for me to go now. But if I don't finish this episode, I'm going to be so uncomfortable that I have to cheekily ask him, "Do you want to see this?" I pointed to SpongeBob SquarePants on the TV screen. "If you like, you can do it," he said softly. Mom, help. If you tease me like this again, I really can't bear it." The abstinent male god, who has been chasing him for so long, suddenly is so gentle with me. I'm afraid I can't help but straighten him up tonight. When Werner Eleanor had just sat down on the sofa next to me, I didn't think it was much, but the longer it takes, I could feel his gaze always on me, from time to time. "Don't look at me. SpongeBob SquarePants isn't better looking than me." But he obviously couldn't hear me. "Werner Eleanor, is there anything dirty on my face?" When he looked at me, for the 45th time, I couldn't hold back any longer. Originally, I only had 5 minutes left in this episode of SpongeBob SquarePants, but under his gaze, I replayed it for countless 5 minutes, and I didn't even read what was going on in the aftermath. "Do you have time to talk?" He stared at me and said seriously. This expression suddenly brought me back to the moment when I saw him in the playground. "What do you want to ask?" I asked as I paused the TV. Swallowed. "When you came out of the police station, you said you liked me? Was it true?" "This one, it's true," I nodded in response. "I've been hungry for him, for a long time." He looked at me and breathed a sigh of relief, as if a big stone had been laid down in his heart. "The boy I saw at the playground last time. My girlfriend introduced me to a blind date." I immediately picked up. His face sank. Did I say something wrong? I consciously shut my mouth. It's been almost 4 or 5 days since I saw the playground that day. He didn't send me any messages and I didn't look for him. If it hadn't been for this accident, I think he might have forgotten about me. "Don't you like me?" he asked me in a deep voice. The light in those broken eyes. For a moment I felt like I was really too scummy. "You don't like me either," I replied to him, puzzled. "Since you are reluctant to me, one party leaves in a chic manner. Shouldn't the result be hello? Me. Hello, everyone." "Who said that? Isn't it an open secret that he doesn't like women?" Alvis Buckle said. Somehow, in the face of his eyes, I began to stammer. Moment of truth. I chose to sell my teammates. After listening to the cause and effect, his face became even more ugly. Rejoice. Rejoice. Woman, he clarified word by word. "I have a hunch Alvis Buckle is finishing. Jessica, don't beat me to death. That you're not going to like me, are you?" After knowing that his sexual orientation is normal, in connection with the questions just now, I somehow turned my brain around and asked this sentence. He was also a little stunned, apparently frightened by my 2 blunt words. "I'll just talk about it." I started playing haha. I despise myself in my heart, and I don't ask any questions. "Yes." Werner Eleanor spoke suddenly. What did you say?" "I seem to really like you." He stared at me and said earnestly. "I'm numb. This time it's general anesthesia, from the soles of the feet to the hair. It's time for me to go. It's like my brain is down." I bounced up from the couch like a spring, and wanted to go out. "Wait a minute." Werner Eleanor suddenly got up and stopped me. In front of me was his strong biceps, the thing I coveted the most. I used to want my eyes to grow on them, but now somehow I don't dare to look at them at all. "I'll send you." After a long time, he sighed. "No, Dunn. They'll pick me up." I frantically pulled out my phone to send a message to Dunn, only to be embarrassed to see that he had sent me more than half an hour earlier. "Lilith Kennan, I'm sorry, but the car was halfway through the way back, and I remembered you hadn't come back yet. It's not easy to get a taxi nearby, so you can ask your friend to drop you off." When he sent me here today, I thought he was worried about me. In less than half a day, I forgot about it. I looked up at Werner Eleanor. "He's looking at my screen. As long as you are not blind, you can see it. Let's go." He picked up his car keys, and looked at me. What else can be said? But who knows if God is determined to oppose me. As soon as I go out, lightning and thunder begin to roar again. Meanwhile, I started to have a typhoon warning on my phone. "Otherwise, you'll just spend the night." "It's too unsafe now," Werner Eleanor asked me softly. I was a little hesitant. By the way, your camera is still upstairs, and I'm just halfway through it. Camera. I slapped my head hard. I was really dazzled by beauty, and I almost forgot the most important things. Okay. Looking at the darkening sky outside, I didn't say anything more and agreed. Dinner was made by Werner Eleanor, and the pots and pans were washed by him. Suddenly, I felt a sense of guilt for eating and drinking for nothing. After eating, Cory Buckle called out of the blue. I glanced at Werner Eleanor, who was cleaning up his food waste, and slid to connect. Have you arrived? I forgot there was a date. I'm sorry. Why don't we make an appointment another day? My leg hurts, and I can't go, I say apologetically. Lilith Kennan, are you playing with me? Cory Buckle replied in a bad tone. No, I can assure you that it really wasn't this time. You don't need it, and I, Cory Buckle, am not someone no one wants. Without waiting for me to say anything, he hung up. This one, I can really explain it. After calling back, he hung up on me. I flipped out his wechat, and as soon as I sent it, a red exclamation mark was displayed. All right. I pulled out my phone, and tried to send a message to Jessica and ask her to explain it to me, but when I think about it, it doesn't seem necessary. Didn't I go to him, and make it clear that I wanted the same purpose as now? Misunderstanding is misunderstanding. Upstairs, Werner Eleanor, who didn't know when he came over, asked as he stood beside me. I was startled, reflexively put my phone on the couch and said hello. He squinted slightly, didn't say anything, and helped me upstairs. As soon as I got to the guest room and settled in, he knocked on my door. Fortunately, there is less water, and it can be used in general. You see, he handed me the camera and whispered, "Thank you." I didn't think it would work. Gently touching it, I had a feeling of being lost and regained. Is it important to you? I replied in a deep voice. Looking down at the ground, under the illumination of the light, I saw his hand slowly lift and fall in the direction of the top of my head. Rest early. When I was holding my breath a little, he spoke softly, "Help me with the door." Don't play with emotions like this. After he left, there was complete silence in the room. I turned on the night light, put the camera on the head of the bed, and slowly lay down. Listened to the crackling rain outside. My mind began to become unstable. My mom gave me this camera. My family background is not bad. Since I was a child, my father wanted to train me as a lady, let me learn tea art, learn flower arrangement, and want me to marry into a bigger wealthy family in the future. But I don't like it. My only hobby is photography. At that time, no one supported me, including my grandfather. Only my mother encouraged me and bought me a camera behind my father's back. She is the most tender woman I have ever seen in the world, but he still hasn't escaped the disease. In the past, every time I went out to shoot, I would take this camera with me, even though I didn't use it most of the time. It's like mom is still with me. The next morning, as soon as I opened the bedroom door, I bumped into Werner Eleanor. "Why are your eyes red?" He walked over and looked at me worriedly. "It's fine." I hurried downstairs away from his gaze. At breakfast, he probably knew I didn't want to talk about it, so he didn't press me again. It's just that the frowning brow has never been put down. After eating, it's no longer raining outside, but it was still overcast, and I couldn't see a passing car for a long time. And finally Werner Eleanor sent me back. No chasing, no burden. I didn't pretend to be poor anymore. I told him my real address. "Can you go up on your own?" Downstairs, Werner Eleanor pulled the car door open and asked me. I nodded. Get out of the car with the force of his arm. After standing still, looking at his usual face, I still opened my mouth. "I'm not as poor as I say I am," I asked him tentatively. "I know." "When did you find out?" "From the moment you said that the agent showed you the house for a month. I was suspicious." Why didn't you demolish me?" I pressed on. "Didn't you lie to me about anything?" He smiled wryly. I want to say it, but I don't know what to say. I really don't want money. The picture is colored." He didn't even touch my hand, but I always feel that something is wrong, and if he pretends to be poor to approach me, I will at least be angry. That's what he. Outrageous. I actually want you to keep cheating. Werner Eleanor spoke suddenly. I looked at him suspiciously. At least that proves you care about me. How do you have a feeling of being stupid and foolish? I really want to push back to him, the brain hospital he pushed me before. Then I'll go up first. I pointed to the neighborhood and asked him, Lilith Kennan, do you have a heart? He suddenly approached me. I stepped back uncontrollably, my back against the window. You teased me first. Why did you unilaterally sentence me to death when I just opened my heart to you? He propped the car with both hands, and imprisoned me in a small square of his arms. I hung my head, trying to run but nowhere to run. Didn't I know you liked me at the time? I thought you were boring to me, and if you couldn't chase me, I would. Changed. I gave my truest thoughts to myself. You found out yesterday, but you're still running away from me. He didn't give me a chance to fool around. I really don't know if it's a person who studies law, and can analyze the slightest clue to the end. As soon as I confided in me today, he connected my actions yesterday. What more do you want to ask? There is no way to avoid it. I broke the jar and broke it. I just want to know who you have in mind right now, or if you don't. He lifted my chin slightly. Let me look at him, without giving me the slightest chance to escape. You're not my boyfriend. Why should I tell you? I turned my face away and looked away. For some reason, I just didn't dare to look him in the eyes. The affection in it made me want to just step back. Because if there is no one, I want to chase you. After a long silence, he whispered in my ear, whether there is anyone in my heart or not, I can't tell. Saying no, my mind always flashed back to him who had protected me that day. Say yes. I hate to admit it, Jessica. Drink. I couldn't figure it out, so I frustrated and sent a message to my girlfriend in the middle of the night. Alvis Buckle won't let you. She replied in seconds. If you don't go, I'll gossip to Alvis Buckle about all the messy things you did chasing boys when you were a kid. 3 seconds later, Lilith Kennan, your uncle. Wait for me to put him to sleep. How long? Half an hour. Bar. How much have you drunk? My girlfriend came, looked at the 7 or 8 empty bottles in front of me, and was so scared that my soul was almost gone. If you're late, you'll go to the hospital and get my. I looked at her and burped back. Before I could say that bad word, she ran over and covered my mouth. I don't know when you're going to be taken in. Bastard, she said indignantly. What's the trouble? After taking the wine glass in front of me and replacing it with a glass of ice water, my girlfriend sat down next to me and asked me. I don't know. I looked at the figures of men and women swaying under the ball of light, and my mind was a mess. That's the man. She gave me a verdict. You only think of men. I opened my mouth to reply, but my heart was a little inexplicably empty. Seems like she's right. Don't rub that little finger for me. I'll know I'm right just by looking at you. Isn't it just that you have a crush on a man who likes women? If you want to go up, there is no man who can't do it, only a woman who doesn't work hard. Jessica slapped the table and cheered me on like a chicken. No, he likes women, I said weakly. He also said he liked me. I lay on my back on the couch and flattened it completely. Then why are you? You're not going to reject a man because of that pickled thing your dad did, are you? Jessica looked at me with hatred. Nodding undeniably. Before my mother passed away due to illness, I always felt that my father and my mother were like a fairy couple, and they accompanied each other from the end of the day to the present, but not until I was 15. My mom just left. He remarried and took the mistress and his son home. My whole world fell apart. My son is only 2 years younger than me. When my dad was just starting out, he had someone outside. From then on, I no longer believed in love. In the beginning, I was reluctant to even fall in love. Later, in the rebellious adolescence, I experienced the feeling of liking people, began to take the route of only talking about not getting married. If anyone starts saying to me that they will love me forever for the rest of their lives, I will break up with him directly. I didn't think Werner Eleanor would like me, but when he did say that to me, I suddenly realized that I couldn't be as dashing as I had been when I had broken up with those boys. If you like it, chase it. Your dad is only a handful of men. Look at my baby Alvis Buckle. There are still many good men, Jessica advised me, but I'm still scared. Let me think about it. In the end, I chose to run away again. In the past, those feelings, I avoided and escaped, and they would be broken. But this time, Hot Spring Manor. Do you want to go? Looking at Jessica's message, I covered my phone in distraught. Somehow, she and Alvis Buckle inexplicably played the role of matchmakers. These days I've been doing a lot of games, and every time I go, Werner Eleanor is always there. What broke me the most was that Werner Eleanor used my old routines against me. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night are constantly used every day. He also asked me about my expertise in taking pictures. That clumsy question. I looked at it as soon as it came out of Baidu, but I answered anyway. Returned. Not available. I'm back to Jessica. Actually, I'm off today, so there's nothing to do. I just think I've seen too many times lately, and Werner Eleanor seems to be able to hold me more and more. I'm a little afraid to see him. At noon, I casually ordered a takeout to deal with it. I was so tasteless that I ate it. From time to time, I always think of the 2 breakfasts and dinners I had at the villa. Werner Eleanor's cooking skills are truly superb. I thought of him again. After a quick CD, I lay back in bed and prepared for my lunch break. Looking at the phone screen, look left and right. No news has been sent. My sad discovery. Without the phrase, good afternoon, I wouldn't have been able to sleep well. Werner Eleanor. When I typed and deleted the message for the 4th time, I couldn't lie down any longer and rushed to Werner Eleanor's school. Far from it, I saw him standing at the school gate, smiling and touching the head of a beautiful girl. Werner Eleanor. I rushed over with a roar of a river lion, and both of them were frightened by me. Stop. Werner Eleanor regained his senses, saw a smile of surprise on my face, and tried to walk towards me, but I was drank. You big liar. Say what likes me, while chasing me, while flirting with girls here. What's the difference from the old me? Scumbag. As I looked at Werner Eleanor with resentment in my eyes, I was suddenly kissed on the cheek. You. The girl who had just been touched by Werner Eleanor looked at me with a smile. I didn't feel anything wrong with kissing me at all, although I have been in love so many times. This is the first time that I have been kissed by someone other than my mother, and I am still a rival in love. I suddenly had some squares. When the girl saw me like this, she wanted to come up and kiss me again. Don't move. I hurriedly stepped back. Vera Eleanor, stop making trouble. Werner Eleanor stood in front of me and separated the girl from me. Hello, my name is Vera Eleanor. It's his sister. My brother talks about you in front of me every day. The first time I saw a real person, I couldn't control it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The girl poked her head out to the left, looking apologetically at me who was being held behind me by Werner Eleanor. It's fine. Suddenly embarrassed. If you talk, I won't be a flashing light bulb. Vera Eleanor winked at Werner Eleanor and ran away in an instant. She used to go to school abroad, and she only came back from the summer vacation this time, and foreign countries are more open, so she will kiss you directly without your permission. Don't go to your heart. She has no malicious intentions. After she left, Werner Eleanor hurriedly explained to me, I'm not angry. To be honest, I like his girl's personality. Then you rushed over with a menace just now, Werner Eleanor said, wondering which tendon suddenly opened. You're not going to be jealous, are you? He looked at me with a smile. Dream. I vaguely avoided looking back. It's okay, I can wait, as long as you have me in your heart. He smiled as if he hadn't heard what I had just said. Werner Eleanor, what do you like about me? I looked at him earnestly and asked. From start to finish, I felt like I had nothing but deception to him. I don't believe he's been able to do it for so long. I don't know. I just think that, when you are by my side, I will be very relaxed and happy. And I was reluctant to reply to messages before, but now when I see that the contact is you, I keep thinking about it. This explains. Do you think it's possible that all you like is the way I message? It's not me, I asked speculatively. I'm 30. He was so angry that he bounced on my brain. Tilda. So what? I rubbed my head and asked. Is it hurting? He looked at me like I was in pain and couldn't do it. His eyes flashed with remorse, and he stepped forward to help me rub it, but I avoided it. I'm in such good condition. You think no one has chased me? He said helplessly. I looked at him steadily, motioning for him to continue. See what he can do with it, but it's only you who makes my heart move. Mom, I might not be able to stand it. I was happy when Alvis Buckle told me that you had no one in your heart. I knew you had a knot in your heart, and wouldn't put too much pressure on you, and I would wait for you. Heart knot, Jessica, it's really a girlfriend, and everything is shaken out for me. No waiting, try it now. I breathed a long sigh of relief, calmed down, and returned. Werner Eleanor jerked his head up at me. There are prerequisites. I quickly put the words in front. If you want to play with me, let's talk like this. If you want to talk about a lifelong relationship that is premised on marriage, give me all your houses, cars, movable property, and bank card passwords. I puffed up my breath, and did it all in one go. I'm afraid I won't be able to go on if I break it. How? I looked at him with an eyebrow. Werner Eleanor was a little embarrassed. I know that there are not many good men. Yes, but you have to wait for me. I haven't counted how much money I have now. Seeing that he was about to pick up his phone to calculate the assets, I hurriedly went up and held his hand. No, not now. You can just give it to me when you get married. In 3 or 2 sentences, he has to hand over all the money, and he is afraid that he is not a real fool. Are you my girlfriend now? He took my hand and looked excited. It's not. I pulled my hand back arrogantly. You haven't said you like me yet. I like you. The speed of this snack. I looked at Werner Eleanor with hatred, but my heart was beating out of my chest. My girl's heart. I like you too. For a long time, I squirmed back. He looked at me like this, and he couldn't help but smile, and his face turned red. Laugh if you want, I replied with hatred. He didn't hold back anymore, and laughed presumptuously. Anything to do in the afternoon? What's wrong? To the hot spring manor. I looked at him and said, go, sprinkle dog food. Jessica and Alvis Buckle, the 2 dog things that show affection in front of me every day. Okay, he replied softly, inexplicably with a sense of self-obedience. Let's go. My face is so hot that I don't get it over. On the way to the parking lot, he quietly took my hand and interlocked his fingers. I can't be cowardly. With that in mind, I reached over with my other hand and grabbed his biceps. You wait here, I'll drive. Before I could touch it twice, he let go of my hand and rushed out. Looking at his back as he fled in a panic, I couldn't hold back my laughter. But just when I laughed and bent over, he's back, clothed. He took off his coat and put it over my head to protect me from the sun. Looking at his back as he walked farther and farther away again, I think, that person may be him. The end.